Midas here. I recently took it upon myself to try reading through the 616 Amazing Spider-Man comics, so that, without the influence of other medias, I could get a look at what the Spider-Man of the comics is really like, and to see if he is different from the version of Spider-Man the world knows. And as I read his first comic, Amazing Fantasy issue 15, there have been some really intriguing things in the story. The comic begins with Peter being made fun of at school. While introducing Peter, it also introduces Flash Thompson and Liz Allen, who appear very often in these early comics. We then get some background on Peter, how he has a great relationship with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, how he does incredible in school, and how he gets mocked due to his shyness and nerdiness. This is all pretty standard stuff, but there's one thing about the main version of Peter that I find very compelling here, as other Spider-Man media rarely shows this. Someday, I'll show them. Someday they'll be sorry. Sorry that they laughed at me. Peter is usually a shy but kind-hearted guy in most versions. In this story though, Peter is clearly shown to be very bitter. I wish this happened in Spider-Man's origin story more often because it makes the rest of this story even more interesting. Peter goes to a science exhibit where there's an experiment, the usual testing radiation rays from people, with nothing protecting them. Anyway, the spider gets hit by a radiation blast and in its final moments bites Peter. As Peter is outside, he's almost hit by a car until he jumps out of the way and clings to a wall. I like how this introduces his sticking abilities, but potentially also his spider sense, although this one isn't actually said in the comic. The reason I think that is because he moves at the very last second without even thinking about it. Peter sees that he's able to climb things and comes to a realization. It's the spider, it has to be. Somehow, in some miraculous way, his bite has transferred his own power to me. So Peter now realizes he must find out what to do with these powers. We then see Peter notice a wrestling ring where he can win $100, over 1,000 now due to inflation, if you can survive 3 minutes against Crusher Hogan. So Peter makes a homemade suit, and let me say, I actually am quite a fan of this design. Peter made the suit the same day he got his powers, so it obviously isn't going to be very complex. Also, Peter wearing a less colorful costume makes his victory against Crusher Hogan look even more spectacular. Put me down, you win, you win! Peter gets a deal where he'll be paid to perform on live TV. At home, Peter fully creates the Spider-Man persona. And now the story is divided into 2 parts, so I just wanted to talk about the comic up to this point. It's incredible how well a story made 60 years ago has aged. Peter feels like someone who could still very well exist today, and I love how Peter isn't shown the best light here. Spider-Man is a person with many flaws to overcome, and that is perfectly shown here. The web shooters were a genius idea. They go to show how intelligent Peter is, with him just casually making this super advanced piece of technology, especially since these were probably made out of super cheap materials. Lastly, I want to just gush about the Ditko suit. The red and black suit works perfectly considering the story it's in. Peter isn't a hero yet. The darker colors and sharper eyes make him look less friendly and more intimidating. He isn't wearing the suit to help people, he's wearing it to benefit himself. Also, while it only appears in this issue, I love the contrast that the blue back logo leaves on the back of the suit. That's all I wanted to talk about, so let's head on to part 2. Spider-Man immediately becomes a huge sensation as everyone is amazed by what he is able to do. After the show, a robber runs past Spider-Man, and Spider-Man does nothing as the robber escapes. One thing I love is that, unlike the movies, Peter didn't do this out of pay revenge. Sorry, pal, that's your job. I'm through being pushed around by anyone. From now on, I just look out for number 1. That means me. Now that Peter has these powers, his true personality starts to surface. He's self-centered and only cares about himself, May, and Ben. Peter himself says later on, they're the only ones who have ever been kind to me. I'll see to it that they're always happy, but the rest of the world can go hang for all I care. Spider-Man then makes more appearances, becoming an even bigger sensation. But one day, Peter returns home, and an officer tells him that a burglar murdered Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben doesn't appear very often in this book, but as we've just established, he's one of the few people Peter genuinely cares about, and from the little that we did see of him, he did seem to be very nice. If you were reading this story, you would not be rooting for Peter at first, but this automatically puts you on Peter's side and makes you want Peter to find the man who murdered his uncle. After he finds out where the man is, Peter gets in a costume and Spider-Man rushes off to the warehouse the burglar is at. While the police have no way of getting to the man, Spider-Man is easily able to find his own entrance. Surprised to see me? Ditko's art works so incredibly well since the darker colors and the skinnier look of Spider-Man makes Spider-Man look creepy and menacing. Peter attacks the robber and beats him with ease, but when he sees the man, he comes to a terrible realization. That face, oh no, it can't be. It's the fugitive who ran past me, the one I didn't stop when I had the chance. Spider-Man then leaves the robber to be taken by the police, and leaves. He then processes everything that happened, knowing that he is responsible for the death of his uncle. In a lean, silent figure slowly fades into the gathering darkness, aware at last that in this world, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And so a legend is born and a new name is added to the roster of those who make the world of fantasy the most exciting realm of all. I absolutely adore how Spider-Man is described in that final part, since this was planned to be his only appearance. It's clear Stan Lee knew that this idea was too great to end so quickly. Considering how superheroes were seen as perfect beacons of virtue back then, it's astounding how the story takes a route where Peter is completely selfish and basically acts like a villain. Had this been written by other writers, Spider-Man probably would have been a villain, but Lee and Ditko knew what it took to make a character that was compelling. He wasn't an outright bad or an outright good person, there was more to him than that. I also love the way that this story gives the message. It's probably been said before, but the story, rather than showing what happens when you have great responsibility with great power, shows what happens with great power and no responsibility. By showing the opposite of the message and showing those consequences, it strengthens the message's importance. The story is incredible. Every single panel matters when it comes to telling this story, and it is not a surprise in the slightest that Spider-Man's story was continued after this. With such a compelling introduction, people had to see more. I love being able to talk about this comic. Who knows, I may discuss more Spider-Man comics in the future. Anyway, that's gonna be it for now. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.